Hi everyone, I hope we are all ready to go on Module 5 since we came off of a 2-week period where we were focusing on Module 4 in the Americans with Disabilities Act. So now we are moving on to a little bit of an easier week, I will say, where we're looking at really accreditation, licensure, and certification. So the basis of this module really is to give you an understanding of accreditation, the purpose of accreditation, and we're talking about accreditation of master's level counseling programs, which you are a part of here at WVU, and then kind of looking at credentialing for yourself and what you can do with the degree once you have completed this program. So there's not a PowerPoint presentation. I think really the Module 5 lecture notes will suffice for that. Being that this is more of an informal discussion by me of what you can do with your degree later on, or the additional licenses and certifications you can get. So just a little bit of historical background about accreditation. Really, whenever I went through the master's program at WVU, we were accredited by CORE, C-O-R-E, the Council on Rehabilitation Education. As much as I love rehabilitation counselors and rehabilitation counseling, I believe I've said this before, we really did a good job at kind of separating ourselves as an area of specialty from all the other counseling specialty areas, and that was the kind of from the ground up. In my personal opinion, although opinions differ with each individual in academia, I always felt that it would better serve rehab counselors to be included with KCREP, and so that's who we are accredited by now. That's the accreditation body for all counseling programs, counselor education programs throughout the United States. CORE and KCREP historically went back and forth. There were different time periods where CORE and KCREP would say the directors, the people that were on their boards would say, maybe we should combine our forces, maybe we should get together. But really, there were talks that happened, and they fell through, and then it occurred again and again until finally everybody came to an agreement, essentially, and it was there was this process, and we're still kind of in this process where schools that had been accredited by CORE continued to maintain their accreditation until a certain period, and now we're seeing that those schools are transitioning over into their sole accreditation under KCREP. Well, I guess they were always just kind of accredited by KCREP once CORE went away, but now people are looking at KCREP standards. And so this really doesn't mean all of that much to you all. It means more for us and on the faculty side of things and how we develop and design our courses. We have to follow KCREP guidelines when we're doing that, and you are privy to all the information from KCREP that talks about their accreditation standards for the specific year period that the school applied for accreditation. And so those standards are updated every 5 years or so. We are under the 2009 standards, though the next time that we go up for KCREP accreditation, it'll be under the 2016 standards. Each time there's some changes, of course, and what's required or may not be required, or how things are worded within the accreditation standards. But essentially what KCREP is there for is to govern counselor education programs and say there's a core set of knowledge areas that we expect that all counselors in every specialty area will come out of a graduate program having. And so everybody has these foundational classes. That's why you have your theories and techniques course. That's why you have your why can't I'm trying, there are other core courses, obviously your ethics course, your research course, your group counseling course, your career counseling course. So these are all core areas of knowledge that KCREP and the rest of the counseling body profession have agreed are core areas of knowledge, core areas of competence that all counselors need to possess. Now, when you get into the different specialty areas, there's career counseling as a specialty area, family marriage counseling, clinical mental health, rehabilitation counseling, clinical rehabilitation counseling, career counseling. Am I missing one? I think that's it. I think I might have covered them all there. So there's a number of different specialty areas, and once schools start to get into those specialty areas, school counseling. Did I forget school counseling? Oh my gosh, they get so mad when we forget about them. And we get mad when we get forgotten about too. So each program, just like we have our clinical mental health and program here at WVU, our school counseling program, and then us as the clinical rehabilitation and mental health counseling program, each of our programs might differ a little bit, but we all maintain that same core set of courses that are being provided to all students. KCREP also accredits PhD programs, doctoral programs, and there's their own set of standards under KCREP for doctoral programs, and what all doctoral programs have to have as part of their core areas of knowledge and content in their classes. And then KCREP comes in, and programs have to submit statistics and reports and all kinds of information, this massive document to KCREP whenever they're going up for accreditation. And oftentimes we call on alumni or current students to provide some input to KCREP. So that's something that just happens. KCREP also looks at our practicum and internships and the logs. So KCREP might look at your logs, and that's why practicum and internship logs are so important when you get there. But they also set the standard for practicum and internship. And so they're the ones that say you have to have 150 hours in practicum and 600 hours in internship. And these are the requirements that you need to meet under both. And they do the same thing for doctoral programs too. So it's important that you come from a KCREP accredited program because that's what employers really are looking at nowadays. In the past, schools could or could not be accredited. It was just up to them. There's a fee associated with accreditation. You have to pay an accreditation body. And so, some schools, some smaller institutions that may not have that additional funds, those additional funds may not have been accredited. But now, licensure boards, especially with LPC boards, state boards, they are, we've seen this more recent movement and trend that I don't see going anywhere, where licensure boards are requiring that students come from KCREP accredited programs, or if not, they have to show proof of certain things and provide all this information explaining why they're just as well educated as those that come from a KCREP accredited program. So what this means for you is that you can feel very secure in knowing that WVU has been an accredited program under CORE, now under KCREP. That will not go anywhere. I'm absolutely certain of it. And so you come from a good program, you come from a long-standing accredited program, and we take that very seriously in terms of how hard your faculty work to make sure that you're developing competence in certain areas. So that's the history of accreditation there for you. So more importantly, and this can be a touch confusing, when you graduate, what will you do with your degree, right? And so this is the brilliant part of our degree program, in that we have that dual accreditation status where we have the clinical mental health and the clinical rehabilitation counseling. And so once you have completed your coursework, and you're at the end of the line, you see the light at the end of the tunnel, which might seem so far away right now, but I promise you it is closer than you think. What you will be able to do is sit for the CRC exam. And with that exam, you'll be a certified rehabilitation counselor. I have complete faith that all of you will pass the exam. It is not a fun exam to take, but we do prepare our students very well to take and successfully pass the exam. So you'll be able to sit for the CRC exam. Once you do that, you can put those additional letters at the end of your name. So this is very important for ethical reasons. Okay, we never want to misrepresent ourselves because it could be an actual ethical violation if we were to do that. And so you as a student in any of your correspondence, you never want to put that little MS at the end of your name until you actually have that degree. And you want to, if you're kind of indicating that you're a counseling student, you want to put that student term in there, that you're a master's student in the WVU clinical rehabilitation and mental health counseling program. That's completely fine. But when you graduate, you'll have that MS to add to the end of your name, but you won't yet have the CRC unless you've taken the exam and you passed it. With the CRC, you get an identification number. It's a 5-year certification, and you have to accumulate a certain number, 100 hours of continuing education over that 5-year period, 10 of which are specific to ethics. And so in order to maintain that certification, you have to do the hours, you have to do the extra work. And if you don't do that at the 5-year period, you'll lose the CRC, or you'll to get it back, you'll have to take the exam again. Goodness gracious, you don't want to do that. So you'll have the CRC title at the end of your name. Now, employers look for this, especially in the state vocational rehabilitation system, our state VR or OVR agencies. That's what they are requiring for their counselors, to have CRC certifications. Once you are certified by the Commission on Rehabilitation Counselor Certification, CRCC, it's a national certification. So I'm a certified rehab counselor in West Virginia, and when I moved to Georgia, I was one there too, and it didn't matter. There's reciprocity with the CRC. Other certifications include the NBCC, that National Board for Certified Counselors, has the NCE exam, and then you become an NCC, a nationally certified counselor. It's basically, that exam is the equivalent of the CRC for other counseling specialty areas. What you might find, and this is the purpose of the discussion for this week, I really want you to think about what certifications you want to get, and then I want you to do some digging and looking into what is required to get those certifications and licenses. So with the CRC and the NCC, those two national certifications, one of those will be required for you in order to become a licensed professional counselor. This is the biggest point of confusion for a lot of students, and I understand because it gets complicated and complex. But if you graduate from a master's program, if it's accredited, phenomenal. If you take the NCE exam, great. You take the CRC exam, great. You cannot put those lovely LPC letters at the end of your name. You cannot call yourself a licensed professional counselor until you've accumulated additional hours, supervised clinical hours. And so nobody is going to graduate from a master's program and the next week be able to put LPC at the end of their name. It's just not going to happen. It takes time, it takes work, it takes effort, a lot of times it takes money. But so that's very important to remember. And in order to get the LPC, regardless of what state you're living in, you're going to have either the NCE exam or the CRC exam completed and pass that successfully. That's the complicated part, okay? A lot of states are now recognizing the CRC exam as an equivalent. And so they're saying, well, if you took the CRC, that's great, that counts for us. Show us all your coursework, turn in your transcripts, show us that you've completed practicum and internship, and then we'll give you a provisional license, right? That means that you can start working towards the LPC. You can start accumulating hours post-graduation. Other states haven't quite got it yet. And so some other states may say, okay, well, if you've taken the CRC, that's lovely. We're not going to accept that for our licensure. You got to go and take the NCE exam. I ended up taking the NCE exam for that reason. And so, and then I moved back to West Virginia, and West Virginia accepts the CRC exam. So now I've got a couple extra letters at the end of my name for no particular reason, but it is what it is. So I want you to look into the state that you're living in, and I want you to look up their licensure board. If you're interested in becoming a licensed professional counselor, which not all rehabilitation counselors have to be. If you're working for a state agency, you don't have to be an LPC. You can if you want, but it's not always a requirement. If you're interested in going into private practice, it depends on the state you're working in. Some states still haven't, kind of picked up on that, and some states will allow some individuals to practice without being an LPC. A lot of states require it. If you're going to bill for Medicaid, Medicare, certain insurances, especially the big insurance companies like Blue Cross, you got to have the LPC. And so you have to look into these things. I want you to be knowledgeable about it before you, get into your internship and think, oh God, I don't know where I'm going with this or what to do or what next steps to take. That's the point of this. I want you to be prepared so you know what next steps to take. So look into your state, see which exam they require. Is it the CRC? Is it the NCE? That way you know what to study for at the end of this degree program. Once you figure that out, take a look at the licensure requirements. Once you have submitted like your application materials, does that mean that you have an associate LPC or an assistant LPC or provisional LPC or whatever the heck they want to call it in that state? Look into it to see what it's called and what other licensure requirements are. We know that some states differ in terms of what classes they want, what courses they want. Dr. Glenn talks about this in the orientation, but just to reiterate it, we know for sure that in Florida they want a human sexuality class as part of their required courses for LPC. We've had people that have successfully put down like our human growth and development class, and that has sufficed for that. So we are confident that the classes that you're taking in this program that we've designed and developed around KCREP standards will meet the requirements for licensure, for state licensure across the board. But, there's always changes, and so who the heck knows what's going to happen in the next 2 years. So make sure that you keep your syllabus every single semester. This is something that not a lot of people do. Keep a copy of your syllabus, keep a copy of your course schedule, make sure that you're able to access your transcripts at a later date. All of these things are important. So where am I going with this? LPC, licensure, again. So once you figure out what state you might want to live in, then you can figure out your LPC board requirements, what it takes. Here in West Virginia, it's so much paperwork, it's ridiculous. You have to have letters of recommendation that are personal letters of recommendation. You have to have professional letters of recommendation that come from current LPCs or licensed social workers. So start thinking about maintaining your contacts as you go along in this program, and as you get in practicum and internship, you might need those contacts later on for these letters of recommendation if your state requires it. There's typically a fee associated with it, so just be mindful of that. The biggest part, the part that differs from state to state the most, is the amount of hours that are required for licensure. Some states it might be 2,500 hours, in other states it's 3,500 hours. And unfortunately, the counseling profession just hasn't really got enough force together from a professional advocacy standpoint to ensure that licensure, that there's reciprocity with licensure as well, that there's portability, meaning that if I'm licensed in West Virginia, I can go 6 miles up the road from my house and be licensed also in Pennsylvania. That doesn't exist yet. So every state has their own little niche of requirements, and so it's important that you're knowledgeable about that, and it's important you're thinking about where do I want to work later on, and how can I best prepare myself to secure that licensure or start the process of doing that once I've graduated. And that's, again, the purpose of this week's discussion, to get you on the right mindset with that, and to help answer any questions that you might have as you get into the information a little bit more. So please, if you find things confusing, post questions on the discussion board. It's better to ask than never know. So with that, I'll leave you guys to it. I told you it'd be short and sweet today, and no PowerPoint, lots of readings. Sorry about that, but remember, you didn't have to pay and wait for a textbook. So have a good day, everyone.